we're talking about really about spiritual disciplines, this podcast and next. And so the key word there is discipline. Yeah. And if you're going to read your Bible regularly, which you should, I mean, it really should be an absolute daily practice, that requires discipline. And so, you have got to form that discipline. You've got to exercise that discipline and make it a habit. And so I guess you might have some thoughts on that word, but that's where we need to start.
Yeah, I remember sitting in a coffee shop with a friend one time, and I was in a season of spiritual dryness, and I was talking to him about it. And I was telling them that I was trying to observe spiritual disciplines. And he resisted that term. He said, well, what you're really trying to foster is your relationship with God. So if you think about it more as a relationship and less of like a discipline, less of like a duty, something you have to do, then maybe you'll have more success. And I agreed with that at the time. But then I got into a serious relationship with my girlfriend and now wife. And what I realized is there are times when it seems as if the relationship requires no discipline, when things just come easily and everything that should be seems very natural. But there are also times when the things that should be require discipline to happen. When you get married especially, and especially when you have kids, you're stretched so much more thinly that things like going on dates or even just talking with each other, those become items that require discipline. So spiritual disciplines, I like the term. And, some people you see seem to be in like the honeymoon phase with God. And that's so beautiful. They're just on fire. Everything is happening. They read the word and they just soak it up like a sponge. In other phases of life, you read the word and it's almost as if it bounces off a wall. It goes in, but it doesn't sink in. So those are the moments when you have to really lean in and become very intentional. And that's okay. And it may be that is even more pleasing to God.
Well, I like the word discipline because it implies a putting down of our own human flesh, if you will. If we exercise and we do that regularly, I mean, you have to make yourself get out of bed. You have to make yourself do those extra reps or push through, that pounding heart. I mean, that requires some mental effort. And so, I view the relationship with God in a similar way. When you read your Bible, sometimes you're going to have to set aside things that you might rather be doing in the flesh, doing. But it's kind of like exercise. If you know somebody who's really into exercise, they get addicted to it, because it makes them feel good. It gives them energy through the day. And, I view the spiritual disciplines similarly. Once you push through and it becomes a habit, then it becomes something that you're looking forward to every day. You want to spend that time with God. And, the thing to keep in mind is what you said earlier. If this is a box checking exercise, you're never going to do it. You're never going to, continue in it. You have to realize, I got this quote from Donald Whitney, discipline without direction is drudgery. And the goal here is godliness. That's what we're striving for. We're not doing it just to check a box so that we can tell our pastor, I've read my Bible every day this week. Right. I mean, not accountability is a good thing, but the goal is to become more Christ-like, more godly in our walk. That's why we're doing the spiritual disciplines.
Yeah, right. And with any discipline, there is a degree of arbitrariness that you kind of have to accept. For example, reading your Bible every day. Most people suggest that you do that if you're a Christian. That's not expressly commanded in the Bible. There are verses that seem to imply that.
Right.
But in some sense, it's a little bit arbitrary. It's something that we've just kind of decided without anything really concrete. And any discipline is going to be like that. If you say, I'm going to work out 3 times a week. Well, you could almost just as easily say 2 or 4. 3 is not a magic number. You kind of have to accept that arbitrariness and just go with it if the exercise is going to happen with the right amount of regularity.
Right, for sure. I also want to just read this verse too. We're talking about discipline. 1 Timothy 4, starting verse 7, says, train yourself for godliness. For while bodily training is of some value, godliness is of value in every way, as it holds promise for the present life and also for the life to come. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, the Bible doesn't say read your Bible every day, but it does say train yourself for godliness.
Right.
And so, how do you accomplish that particular command without the discipline and without the routine? And again, the end here is godliness. The end is not knowledge, and we'll talk about this some more as we go along. We don't read just for knowledge. If we're reading the Bible just for the knowledge of it, we're missing the mark.
Right.
So the mark is moving us toward godliness.
Right. Knowledge puffs up, but love builds up.
Absolutely.